What's up, guys, and welcome back to another edition of Competitive Edge Podcast. So today, this is a really cool conversation because you guys know how much I post about health, wellness, fitness, and my journey I have shared along the way. Our guest today, Dr. David Boyd, has been one of those people that has impacted, influenced me, actually poured in. I follow his content because it's one of the few people, I will say, that's actually online, that's relevant, that has substance, that is real. And when you look at what he has done with his team, Blind Spot Medical, we'll include all the links later. Guys, what I know is for all of us, if we don't have our health, doesn't matter how much money you've made, how much success, any of those things, we all want to be healthy. What I've learned on this journey the past few years has been remarkable about the things we can do proactively, maybe even the things, if you're like me, that I thought were true, that I had to unlearn and actually get new information and figure out how do I become my best. So our 3 kids, Nicole, my wife, I can be the best in all those areas and still be a high performing corporate athlete. I say now, not on the field, but a corporate athlete. So make sure you bring pen and paper today. We're going to cover all of those things. What are the things you should be doing in your own life? And I'm sure this is going to be a conversation that you're going to want to implement things immediately in your health. So Dr. Boyd, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Dude, I'm excited for this one because I'm going to tell you, when we connected up, and I know some of your patients, some very high net worth, very well-known people that you work with, and it's such a different ballgame today in the sense we came up, we had primary care physicians and we go to one doctor and get all this information and all that, and you've broken the mold of that. I mean, blind spot, even the name of it, I love that you've shared this, is we all have these blind spots. There's tests we're probably not doing. There's things we don't know about our health that if we knew, we could probably treat sooner. So let's go back to that. Is why did you form that, and really what blind spot, that kind of meaning and what you've created?
So like many things that we're changing in the world, this all kind of came out around 2020. I was a hospital doctor, and it was a really weird time just in the world, but particularly in the country, because if you looked on the news, like everybody was dying of COVID, right? Yeah. If you looked on social media, nobody was dying of COVID. And so then there was the reality, which was really the kind of the in-between, and where it was sick folks that just needed a little something to push them over the edge, Mm-hmm. And, it's easier now to take a look back during that time. But when we were in it, man, when you were a hospital doctor, you had folks rolling into the emergency room. We had overflow on the hospitals, not enough ventilators. I mean, you're literally making life and death decisions day in, day out. And I got to a point where after that whole wave was done, where I was like, what are we doing? Like, it's just in healthcare in general. Like, what are we doing? You had folks that had so many comorbidities and everything, and some of them even at fairly young ages, that just as a society, we weren't healthy. I felt like I was more of part of the problem than part of the solution. You have big pharma running things, big insurance running things, all of this stuff. And I was like, what if there was an option for someone that if you didn't want to participate in that at all, there really wasn't any other avenue at that point in time. And so that's really where Blind Spot really came from, was during that time. I was like, I'm done. I'm done with the entire medical system. Yeah. And so I'm going to do one of two things. Either I'm going to figure out a way to bring a something new to folks. And I didn't know really how I was going to do it, or I was going to leave medicine completely and go sell Ferraris because I like cars. And that was it. Like, those were my two options. So yeah. So this way has worked out. It's been the interesting thing about it is I didn't have any business experience or anything like that. There's a lot of nuances that come with really going against the entire system, because when you plug, like, you have to consider most doctors, how they run their offices and everything is their referral base, their leads, if you will, are all coming from insurance companies. Mm-hmm. And so that's, they'll get in, they do what they do, whatever their specialty is. And then the individual pays some sort of a copay, and then the insurance pays the rest. So the insurance companies really have the doctor on the hook to, they can control a lot of their cash flow and their business then. And 9 times out of 10, they'll start with a higher rate. And then as the years go by, they start whittling the rate down more and more so that individual has to see more and more patients. And you get the terrible customer service that we have in our healthcare system. Like, this is how it works, you know? So in order to do something completely separate from that, the only way is cash. And when you hear that, most folks go, well, wait a minute, like paying for healthcare, like that this is the United States. Like, we don't do that,
Right.
you know? And it's unfortunately, it's become so much of our culture where we've been conditioned to, you have to have insurance and there's copays and so forth and so on. And most folks don't realize that's probably the biggest blind spot of it all, is that that's just one box. That's just one form of control with things. The reality of the situation is, the folks like the one percenters and everything, they don't participate in that.
Yeah.
There's a whole other healthcare system that's now available that if you bypass all the insurance and everything, folks have access to. And there's no red tape, and there's either little to no waiting, and it's way better customer service. And if you look at the cost difference, it's about the same, maybe a little bit more, but for what you get for the difference, it's a no-brainer.
I love that, because I remember back as you're sharing that COVID times, we're all at home, we're figuring things out. I think everybody started to kind of take a look around us, just like, okay, what's happening? And like, you start to introspectively look, like, what do we have set up? Like, are we taking in the right supplements and vitamins? Like, what are we doing proactively? I remember, we talked about this too, and thank goodness, I started to go down that rabbit hole, so to speak. And I'm like, well, what could we do? What are the options? And I love you said that about blind spots, because I realized there were some blind spots that we had. I'd love to know, as you see people outside of like healthcare and other options that are there, what are some of the biggest blind spots when you talk to somebody that they may not be aware that they even have today in their health that they could proactively go after and attack and get better treatment or better options?
I have an acronym that I like to share called POP, P-O-P-P. And I'll explain what that means in a second. But I think the biggest blind spot that folks don't realize is information. And the fact of the matter is like the relationship that Americans have with actual doctors is terrible right now. It's very, very fractured. And I understand completely. After all the shenanigans that happened after COVID, like, people don't trust doctors anymore, So I get that. But because of that mistrust, there's still that yearning, that craving for information of like, well, what do you do? And so they turn to social media. And the biggest issue that I see is that you have folks that are turning to health influencers on social media, that they don't realize that these folks are influencers. They don't realize that it's like somebody's giving information so that they can say, here, I have this solution that's seemingly way too simple. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you use my affiliate code and buy this, well, now these influencers are making millions off of that, off of spreading misinformation and getting likes and, increasing their pseudo celebrity status that wouldn't be there otherwise. So I think that's actually one of the main problems to begin with, is that folks need to consider, where are you getting your information from? And it's, in this day and age, you can have a study that proves anything. You can have a study that proves either for or against, So it becomes very difficult to actually separate things out of what's truth and what's not. So that's what I encourage folks, first and foremost, is think for yourself, like be a smart person and say, you know what, if this seems too good to be true, it probably is. And the reality is that it's not as simple as things being black and white the majority of the time. It's always some sort of wave of gray that's there. So you have to do due diligence, and you have to do what's best for you. What works for me, the exact diet plan that I follow, may not be the best exact diet plan for you. And that's totally okay, because we're all a little bit different. There are some general things that you follow those general things, it's going to move things more so into your favor.
I love that. Well, since you brought it up, let's talk a little about, as people are searching, you can find anybody that's going to tell you need to go do this diet, carnivore, paleo, you name it, whole 30. Like, everybody's like, this is the one. I know my journey, but I'd love to hear what you coach people to, what you advise, and what your experience has been, because I've been watching your journey, and you've been getting into exceptional shape, and you're already in good shape. And I watch that and go, okay, what can I learn from what Dr. Boyd's doing? So what should people know about their food choices, things as they're starting on that journey?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is question where your food is coming from. And it's really hard nowadays because now our society, you go to the grocery store to get food. If you go back to like the time that even our grandparents were, when they were children, it's like you could still get food off the farm and things like that and everything that wasn't covered in pesticides. GMO didn't exist way back in their generation, So now you think you're eating healthy just because you're buying organic, for example. Well, the term organic is pretty loose when you actually start, researching what that means. So, you do the best that you can in terms of the quality of the food that you're getting, I think is really step number one. As far as for best diet, I always experiment on myself before I advise anybody else. So I've pretty much done it all. I've done paleo, I've done keto. I was, hardcore vegan for like 6 months. I've run the full gambit and checked my labs and everything accordingly. And within all that, what I've found seems to be the most balanced, at least for me and for my patients and everything, is you go on more of a higher protein Mediterranean diet seems to be the healthier choice. The thing about protein is that I'm 47. I know you are as well. Yeah. Once we hit about 35, particularly men, we start having a degradation of our muscle mass, and it just amplifies as we get older. This is the reason why you can look at a muscular 35-year-old guy and have an idea of what that individual looks like. And then if you were to look at that person's father that's like 75, they look at very, very different body types. Majority of 70-something-year-olds, they start losing muscle mass. It's almost like they start melting, where it's like they get like this midsection that starts to develop more so with fat consolidation around that area. And the reason why is because of the loss of the muscle mass. As we lose muscle's very metabolic. It allows us to burn calories effectively and so forth. And so if we prioritize your protein intake when you're younger and you continue that throughout, if you prioritize resistance training so that you maintain that muscle mass, it'll at least slow down that process of muscle wasting that occurs as we get older. And what that means is that you're less likely for falls, you're less likely for heart disease, diabetes, cancer, all those things, just by making some positive diet choices and regular exercise. So simple, not easy, it's because what it is it's developing these habits that you're going to stick to on a regular basis.
Yeah. And I love that too. And I love you share that kind of Mediterranean. I've been watching some of the stuff you've shared. I'm like playing with this, and I did paleo for a while, and I tried some different things. Like if I blend these together, and then I always get the question that I'm sure you get is, how much protein? Right? Like you're like, yeah, we need all this protein. I've heard crazy numbers. So what are you advising your patients, and what's that optimal level that people should be looking for and targeting?
Yeah, about a gram of protein per pound of body weight. Yeah. There's a little bit more if you're trying to add some more muscle mass or something like that. But the answer is about a gram. And the key thing with it is when you're taking in that amount of protein, particularly if you're doing resistance training, which you should be doing, your kidneys have to process all of the breakdown products of that. So along with that is you need to be drinking plenty of water. The question then becomes, okay, well, how much water? About a gallon. There's going to be, most days you're not going to hit it, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if you shoot for it, if I have it measured out that I'll get supposed to drink 4 of these a day, I usually get 3. Maybe I get 3.5 or something like that, But if you're aiming towards that, you're going to be very well hydrated, and and you'd be able to filter out all the byproducts and everything from the protein breakdown.
Hey guys, it's Brian here. I hope you are enjoying the show. By the way, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur looking to grow your personal brand, make a bigger impact, maybe increase your leads and grow your revenue? Let's help you get started today by connecting up with my friends over at the Brand Builders Group. You've heard me talk about them, but if you're new here, this is definitely the first step to get you started in turning your reputation into revenue. Head over to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey. Again, to set up your free brand call, go to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey to set up a free strategy call with one of the team at Brand Builders, and they will dive into your specific goals for how you want to grow your personal brand. I can't wait to hear how it goes. What about breaking it down? I've heard this too, right? You see things, you hear things on social, but people are like, you need protein from real food sources versus, of course, the powders and other ways that we're getting protein these days to try to get to that gram per body weight. Is there a difference between those that people should be aware of, real food versus, I love a good protein powder after working out, and that different version?
Yeah, I think there probably is. And I say probably because, again, you go do a deep dive on this on the internet, you're going to find an argument that says both ways. You're going to find something that says protein's protein, it doesn't matter. You're going to see other folks are going to say you got to go 100% natural. I mean, I think ideally, the ideal situation is that we're only eating whole foods, that we're never eating anything out of a bag or out of a box or, that came in some sort of a package or something. Yeah, that's the ideal.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, when you're busy and you're trying to make things happen and such, you're probably going to end up grabbing a protein shake here and there, so you do the best that you can with things. What I tell folks is this: shoot for 80%. Because if you're trying to be perfect all the time, you're going to drive yourself nuts. It's not a reality, But if you're about 80% clean, that means that, listen, if it's Friday and you're going to take the kids out for pizza, go. That's fine. Enjoy it. If it's your birthday and you're going to have a couple cupcakes, enjoy it on your birthday. Life's short. But then you get back on track. And that's where having those good, high quality habits in place to keep things locked in, that's really going to make the big difference.
I love that. Yeah, that's more of the model that I've gone down, and I've shared some of my journey, and I'm like, I didn't want to be in a complete prison. I didn't want to be those like just so regimented, but it is, I'd say, over 80% of the time. But if we have a pizza night during the week and you want to do that Friday night, I also don't want to be the dad that's like, I'm not going to do that. And I found it works for me. I've some other people, maybe not, but I'm like, I've set the discipline of I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not eating a whole pizza.
Yeah.
And then crust and different things where I'm like, if I'm doing it, we're going to do it this way. So it's not crazy. So I'm glad you shared that, because I think a lot of people do struggle with, they fall off and they beat themselves up. And it's almost like I had a conversation. I was telling you some of them this week while I was traveling, and people are like, man, when I fall off, whether they have a drink or they eat bad or skip a workout, then that just tends to steamroll and roll into now 2 days, 3 days. Heck, now it's a week, and I'm going to start next Monday, right? I'll get back on it. Have you found with that, because I know you're pretty disciplined and you work with some clients that I would say are in the top 1%ers, if not even higher than that. Are there things that they do or in their routines that you've seen that keep them able to sustain this, right? Because I think that's what everybody's looking for, is like, they want to commit to this new lifestyle, but sustaining it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah. The short answer is yes, but I'm going to put a little asterisk on that. Okay. Because the reality of the situation is this: everybody has a breaking point. So when you consider the way I like to think of this almost like you're building a pyramid. Okay. So if you're going to build this pyramid, there's a reason why I'm choosing this shape. I'll explain. If you're going to build a pyramid, you need to have, the larger it's going to be, you need more of a wider base, more of a wider solid base to it. Right. So let's say you're a $5 million a year earner and you want to become a $10 million a year earner. You're going to have to increase that base out even more so. Right. So that means you're going to have better control over your habits, meaning that you're going to have to, now you're going to have to make sure that you're going to sleep about the same time every night. You're getting up about the same time, that your sleep is high quality, that you're not, drinking a bunch of alcohol to get to sleep and everything, that you're eating right and exercising. You're prioritizing your family and your relationships and your relationship with yourself. The issue becomes, man, is as folks are growing and working towards becoming higher earners, and along with that, there's all the things that come along with it. There's all the stress. You have more people depending on you, et cetera. If you don't reinforce that base, then eventually something's going to give. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've seen over and over again, is that with these really top individuals, eventually you have somebody who's never really been a drinker that they start drinking, never been a gambler, start gambling. That if you don't have a wide enough base to carry all that weight, something's going to give. Mm-hmm. So that's what I encourage my patients. I encourage the listeners here on this podcast is you got to ask yourself, we have a tendency to just keep driving towards what we want and getting bigger and better and all those other things. Oh, yeah. You have to take pause for a minute and say, okay, if I want to go get this thing, if I want to go after this target, if I want to hit this new goal, what reinforcements do I have in place that when I have that extra weight on me, and you will, that you're not going to break something that's going right in your life right now. Mm-hmm. This is the reason why you see folks that, all of a sudden they double their income and their marriage falls apart. Yeah. Because they weren't watching that base of things carefully enough. Yeah.
That's a good word. That is, and we've seen it. I know you and I, we've seen people like that where they're so obsessed about one area and they achieve it. They get it.
Absolutely.
While something else completely falls. And I remember I had a mentor tell me this, and it was about juggling balls in the air. And he's like, imagine you're juggling all these balls and all of them are rubber except for the one. The one that's glass is your family. It's the one that if that drops, that breaks, you put it back together. It's never back the same. Yeah. And so he'd always just share that. And it was this reminder. I could always see the visual of like, and all these other things. Like if I drop, let's just say my running or my working out or my eating for a little bit of time, like not ideal, but that ball's going to bounce back up. I'm going to get back in the game. But he's like, this other one, you don't lose sight. And we've seen it. And so I'm glad you shared that, because I think for many of us, it is like this prioritization. And for high performers, it's a struggle because, we want to win in everything.
Yeah.
At the same time, like all the time in every area. And so it's something to pause and reflect. Yeah, dude, good word. Okay, let's change a little gears, because you mentioned lifting weights, and I keep seeing this, and I love to lift. Like this has become, being a soccer player, we didn't lift. And so like when I found lifting later in my life, like probably 35, tried some CrossFit, couldn't do anything. I remember walking in and being very humbled, humbled.
There's a tendency to do that, yeah.
Like I can't do any of this stuff. And I thought I was an athlete. And outside of some box jumps and a few, cardio things, I'm like, wow, I got a lot I can learn, which I love. You talked about strength training, and everything I keep seeing and learning in my own journey is like, man, the more I move heavy things correctly and even kind of move fast with heavy, like I get great results. I feel good. It's like this, it's almost this superhuman protocol in a way of like, I love it. It's become my jam versus just running or just doing cardio. So what are you starting to see now with that lifting? And, especially the people listening that probably in their 30s, maybe 40s, maybe even 50s now, how important is this resistance training? Let's talk about what they should be doing so they know like what is proper strength training in these areas?
So it's very important. Like I want you to consider something. We were not made to just sit behind a desk. Like that's not what we were made for. Humans have been around for a very long time, but with evolution and everything, we're still not so evolved that we're just supposed to sit around a desk. Like, you're not a blob. So we're supposed to be like active and doing things and moving all the time and things like that. So that's really what resistance training is. So back in the day where you had to, like, if you wanted a house, you had to build it yourself. You had to go chop down the tree and, drag the log and stack them up. And that was resistance training back then. Well, now we have a relatively comfortable lives, most of us, thankfully. And so that's going to a gym or creating something for yourself to essentially do that hard work that we're meant to do it in order to keep your body healthy is really what you're reconstructing, Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan of moving large muscle groups. And the reason why is that particularly your legs, your back, these larger muscle groups, for both men and women, this is one of the ways that not only you get stronger, as you get stronger and increase muscle mass, you improve your metabolism and use energy more effectively. But the other thing is it really affects your hormones as well. So when you go and you move these larger muscle groups and everything, you're secreting more testosterone, you're secreting more growth hormone. These are all things that are supposed to be there in the first place in order to help you heal, in order to help you maintain, all of your body functions and everything. So strength training is very important.
I see you doing it, man. I see you moving some big weights, and I got some friends, and I always say this. I don't know if females feel the same way, because I'm a dude, so I just know how I feel and go through that. But I'm like, I like to move heavy things well. It's like this just challenge of like, if I move that, and then like my little 9-year-old needs me to carry. He's almost 100 pounds now. I mean, Dr. Ward, he's a big kid now, and I'm going, if I need to pick him up, I'm not worried. You know, and I just think about, like you said, like things you go do. And we were doing some demo in the house, and we're moving these old cabinets and shelves and stuff out. I'm like, just to be able to do things. And I think about moving and lifting. Let's take the group that maybe is listening, and they're like, they've been out of it for a while, right? Like maybe they're like, I haven't lifted weights in 5 years, 10, whatever it might be. Are there things you advise people when they're starting to get back into that a little bit that you prefer? And I said, move large muscle groups. Are there ways that they should start to re-engage that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the what I do with a patient like that, that's coming to me, first thing I do is I get them walking. Sounds simple, right? So it is, because it is. So really all I need to do, about a 20-minute, 30-minute walk, you do it 5 times a week. It should be zone 2 cardio. That's about the point where we could carry on a conversation at the same time, but you're moving, you're walking with a purpose. Yeah. And the reason why that's important, there's this magical place in the zone 2, zone 3 in the cardio range where you can really burn calories effectively. You're not really doing damage to your joints or anything like that. You're actually getting somewhere, heart's beating effectively. You do 30 minutes at zone 2 cardio, you're burning about 150 calories, 175 calories, something like that. It's enough that you can actually, if you just stick with it for 10 days, I promise you, you're going to feel better. Like you'll feel better, you'll move better, you'll notice your endurance you'll make that same walk that's around the block a couple times, you make it a little bit faster. You start to actually see, wow, the human body is actually pretty amazing. The other one that I love to do, and this works for women as well, but for guys can have a tendency to be kind of competitive, is a 100 push-up a day challenge. Mm. And so if you take 30 days, and if you do 100 push-ups a day, it sounds like a lot. It's not. It's, if you're doing 25 push-ups 4 times, it takes you less than 3 minutes. So what I tell folks to do is pick your favorite 80s song, and you just do the push-ups for the duration of that song. So for me, I did this years ago for myself as a test. I chose Danger Zone. Right.
Oh,
Kenny
yeah.
Loggins, right. So that was my song. It's like 3 minutes, 20 seconds, something like that. So I had 3 minutes, 20 seconds to do that 100 push-ups. However I needed to do it. If I needed to do 10, take a break, whatever it was. Yeah. What happens is by the end of that month, if you look at yourself in the mirror, if you take a picture every day, whatever you want to do, you start noticing, your pecs start developing more, your shoulders, you start getting shoulder caps again. You do this, especially as you're heading into the summertime, you're like, man, I'm looking pretty good, So it's these little small stints that you can just start with, nothing fancy. That if you start doing those things, whether it's push-ups or some air squats or going for a walk around the block, just take some time that you just carve out a few minutes to yourself. And what it does is it builds momentum. Mm-hmm. And when you start seeing that win, that's when you really crave the next step, where you're like, all right, maybe I'm going to go to the gym. Maybe I'll invest a couple bucks and, buy some weights and a bench on Amazon or something and set up something in the garage. Whatever it is, you're starting to build this momentum now that you can start giving yourself some wins.
I've had to do that along the way. I love you sharing that too. And even, when I torn my bicep years ago, and I was like, I could really only walk for a while. There was a lot of restrictions and all. I'm like, the walking was surprising. When you walked, you actually went for a while. I was like, we worked up our pace. Nicole and I would go usually and take our dog and stuff. And I'm like, you can burn some calories. I remember I was dropping weight, of course, because I was losing muscle mass, but I was enjoying the actual therapeutic side of like walking mentally, but physically it was great.
Yeah, and it's something, I was in Italy over the fall, and when I was there, I was looking around, I just took notice. There's not many overweight people, and the entire time I was there, I was eating Italians for breakfast. They don't have a bunch of eggs and things like that. They usually have like a pastry and an espresso or something, so it's very high carbohydrate, having pasta every night and everything. I'm thinking to myself, everybody's fit.
Yeah.
And reason being, they walk everywhere, So there really is something to us using our body effectively on a regular basis and just doing regular human functions on a regular basis. We have a fairly cushy, comfortable society nowadays. So challenging ourselves in those ways is incredibly important, really, for overall health.
I love it. We had a great trip to Italy as well. I think we were going back and forth. I was kind of vicariously living back through you. I'm like, that was some of the best we felt. We were walking so much every day. Like I was watching my steps, and you could eat more. And I felt like, oh, this is wonderful.
It was great. And you have like 20,000 steps a day, just sightseeing.
Just moving. Well, you mentioned something earlier. I know people, they want to know. I was on this journey years ago, and you talk about this as getting your blood work, getting your hormone panels and all this stuff. So let's break that down for people that may have not taken that step. I know in my journey, that was huge, and I'm still learning, but the importance of a blood test, like what should people be thinking about? And then we can move in. I want to talk about some hormone stuff because people always ask, and at 47, something I'm paying attention to more.
Yeah. So let me preface it this way. We live in an amazing day and age where you essentially get to choose how you want to age. That's the beautiful thing about right now. Like right now, particularly in healthcare, amazing place. But in order to do that, you have to be willing to sidestep the system a bit, because right now, the medical system, it's built on keeping people sick, not dead, sick, like chronically sick. Why? So you can sell them more pills.
Yeah.
Right. So it's more prescriptions on a monthly basis, keep getting filled, so you can keep paying insurance premiums. When you start looking at it through those eyes, then you really start to see things for what they are. So if you're willing to step out of that system, which I encourage folks to, and instead be responsible for their own health, then that's really when you can start looking at this this period of optimization and so forth. So I mentioned to you earlier in the podcast, I use this acronym called POP. Okay. So POP stands for prevention, optimization, protection, and then planning. Mm-hmm. And if you take that approach with things, life is going to be absolutely beautiful for you. So let's talk first about prevention. If you simply just go by the guidelines of cancer screening and things like that, you got to remember, this is all based on population studies. So there's a bell-shaped curve, meaning you're going to have the majority of folks are going to fall in that statistical group in the center of the curve, but you have outliers either way. You don't want to be one of those outliers, right? So example for you, colon cancer is on the rise, and it's on the rise because of our standard American diet, which is a sad diet to begin with. So if you just wait till age 45 to do a colonoscopy, then there's all the folks that are in their early 40s and 30s, they're going to develop colon cancer and they're going to fall outside of that curve. So it becomes the individual's really obligation to really start looking for things in an aggressive manner. And that's where the preventative side comes in. Folks are seeing more and more about these companies that are willing to do like a full body scan and things like that and everything. Some are better than others. It's a tool. There's always limitations when you use a tool. There's no such thing as a perfect test. But what I love about this, and there's a bunch of these companies that are out there, what I love about this is it gets people paying attention to their health, and it gets it taking into their own hands. So I would encourage folks start looking into that type of thing. At Blind Spot, it's one of the things that we do is, we have an executive physical program that it's bar none. And I intentionally created it that way, that it would be the best on the planet. But for those folks that wouldn't be a fit for Blind Spot, know that there's other options. And it's really, I encourage them, like, look at what those options are. So number one is prevention and aggressive prevention of that. The next part, the O of POP, is optimization. That's really the fun part. Because with the optimization, you're looking at things where it is specific to you. So instead of, not every person needs to have a testosterone level that's like 1200, it may not benefit you, but if for the individual that is, trying to make more money, be healthier, lose weight, improve their libido, sex is a very important part of life, not just for enjoyment, but it's what bonds a husband and wife together. Mm-hmm. And that bond is what creates a stable family. So when you start looking at things in this way of like, okay, when I'm optimizing, I'm not just optimizing to be fitter or stronger, I'm really optimizing my life. Mm-hmm. You can really do quite a bit through things like hormones and peptides and things like that. The next part to that is the protection. So consider that this is a process. You try to prevent disease, you optimize, and then once you're optimized, you try to keep that train going by protecting what you have going on. And that just takes regular lab work. So I encourage folks to check labs every quarter, where every 90 days, you're making sure that everything's on point. Because when you start having something slide, the sooner you catch it, the better. And you can make those adjustments and those changes, providing you have a doctor that is well-versed on optimization, is willing to work with you on that type of thing. The last P is planning. And that's really, that's a very fun part too, because that's really saying, hey, what do you want to accomplish this year in all areas of your life? And if you're like, man, I want to travel, I want to, I've got my anniversary coming up and we want to do this. I want to do this in my business. I have, I want to finally hit 400 pounds of my leg press, whatever it is. Yeah. But it's really when you group all those things in together is when you can take a step back and say, okay, what do we need to do to reverse engineer all these things for you in your diet, in your sleep, with your hormones and everything, that you can actually hit those targets that you really want to hit.
Love it. I'm gonna remember that pop, and I've loved the things you've shared. I love the way you break that down too, because we're all somewhere on that spectrum and going back and forth. And you've made a huge impact in my life. And I just think about all the people that have asked me, as we go on this journey and we share some of our steps and progress, and also share the things that don't work. Like, hey, I tried this, it didn't work. But I love that. This has been amazing. I know we could talk forever. I had friends asking me questions, hormone stuff, peptide stuff, and I always say this, and we'll put Dr. Boyd's Instagram in there. We'll put the link to his website, how to contact him. So everybody listening, you're probably, you have questions, you want more information, all of that stuff, and find out, if you'd be a fit to work with his team. I would encourage you, reach out, connect, do something, take action. I know in my journey, that was the thing that I wasn't sure if it was for me, and I had all these excuses as to, why I wouldn't do it and all that. And I can just tell you, I couldn't imagine going back to the way that I was before I started this journey. And so thank you for being one of those catalysts and one of those people along the way that I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what about this? And if you don't have somebody in your corner, just like many of you run a successful business, you have a mentor, you have a coach, you have somebody in your life that guides you through, this is the path. Let's not go that way yet, or that's not a good option for you. If you're not doing that in your health, I can just tell you, even this week, Dr. Boyd, I'm talking to people that are low on energy, low on lots of things that they know they need to compete and win in their business or other areas of their relationship and their life, yet they just haven't taken an action yet.
Yeah, I'll tell you in that regard, and we were talking about this before we got started. I recently lost my dad, and that's one of the things that I've learned. Just really, his final lesson that I learned from him is that, man, life is short, and we've only got one shot at this. And so, really leaning into yourself to be the best version of you, to tell the truth, to live fiercely, to love fiercely, and to have very high quality relationships with high quality people. That's it. I mean, so it's like we're in life right now. There's no time to wait. It's up to us to have the highest quality life that we can. And in regards to you, man, I just want to thank you. So thank you for having me here on the podcast. I've loved connecting with you over the years, and I've seen you just grow and explode over the years. all the information that you share, you can tell it's from your heart. You're authentic the way that you live. And I thank you for that. You're just a good person and you bring good to the world. So thank you for being such a great example.
Oh, brother, that means the world. And you said it. I want to do life with people like you that are on that same mission and journey. And I know I don't have the information and the expertise you do. But I always tell people that's what I've learned in my life from sports and businesses. If you surround yourself with people in your corner and on your team, you can achieve greatness. And do the same is true for you. That's why I wanted to bring you on here. Is I believe there are people that need to make that decision in their life. And it's like when you have something good to offer people, I'm like, I can tell you about it, but we got to take this next step. We got to get you in the game because I know what that ripple effect will be, especially if they have kids, they have a spouse, they're leading a company and a business. The example and that standard that's set, other people are going to follow. And so all the leaders that listen to this and are listening now, guys, this is your call to action, right? If you haven't taken action in this area, but you've thought about it, you listen to this today and you're like, I need to do something. We're going to have Dr. Boyd's information in there. Reach out, ask the questions. I will tell you that's where I started, just being curious. And from there, it led to now a few years into this thing, and I'm still learning. I feel like I'm back to being a beginner, and I'm like, oh, cool, we've done this. Like you said with Pop, well, now I got to go attack this area again. And that's the game.
Yeah, you're learning, and you're looking great doing it. So keep it up.
Brother, hey, we're setting the new standard, 47, and headed closer now to 50, it'll be 48 this year. As I say, I want to change what that looks like. And so my kids can see, okay, that's possible. That's possible. Well, friend, thank you. This has been awesome. And guys, make sure you like, subscribe, leave us a comment. I always love to see the reviews there. If this has been something informative or has been something that's really inspired you to take action, let us know. That's how we get the show out to other people. And that's the second part of the ask is share this with people. We don't do this to make money. I don't have this thing monetized out there. I love to bring on my friends and really important people I believe that have changed my life, that have inspired me and others so that you can get the right information. You go take action in your own life and become that best version of yourself. Because if you're leading people, which I know most of you are, you've got a family, you've got kids, you've got people that are counting on you. We deserve to be our best. And I believe that everybody around us wants that best version of ourselves that Dr. Boyd was referring to. So make sure you connect up with us, catch us on the next episode, and make sure you share this with somebody and go out there and do something great. See you on the next one.
Bye.